Please welcome Thomas Montenegro Johnson, University of Birmingham.
I'm Professor Tom Montenegro Johnson, Head of Applied Mathematics at the University of Birmingham. We are a global top 100 university with an important mission to solve important problems. One of those very important problems is epilepsy, a condition that affects over 65 million people globally. That's why I'm really excited to introduce Neuronostics, a university startup co-funded by two of my colleagues. Building on over 10 years of their research experience, Neuronostics have determined new ways to interrogate routinely acquired clinical data and, from it, reveal the risk of future seizures. Working closely with clinical partners in the UK, Europe, and the USA, the team are currently validating their technology as a clinical decision support tool for diagnosis and prognosis. It's therefore a great pleasure for me to introduce Professor John Terry. Now, John is not only a brilliant scientist, he's a visionary leader and an exceptional presenter. He's going to tell us how mathematical models and computational algorithms can revolutionize how we diagnose and manage epilepsy.
Breaking the wall of epilepsy diagnosis and management. John Terry, Neuronostics.
At Neuronostics, we believe that anyone, anywhere should have access to fast, accurate, and objective diagnosis and treatment. Our first focus is on epilepsy. Epilepsy affects 65 million people globally at a cost of $180 billion annually. It takes over a year to confirm a case of epilepsy, and for some differential conditions such as non-epileptic attack disorder, that number can be as high as 5 years. And even then, the misdiagnosis rates are startling, 30% or even more. Why is this? Well, epilepsy is characterized by hypersynchronous bursts in the brain's electrical activity called seizures. And without observing a seizure or an electrical signature of a seizure, it can be very difficult to confirm a case of epilepsy. Now, for most people with epilepsy, and almost all people without epilepsy, these events occur infrequently and seemingly at random. The results? Delays, uncertainty, cost, and significant quality of life impacts for people with suspected epilepsy. Instead, we have developed a patented CE-marked digital biomarker, BioEP, which can reveal the risk of future seizures from just a few seconds of apparently normal EEG. It takes just a few minutes to calculate, and it provides valuable additional information to a clinician when faced with one of the millions of clinically inconclusive EEGs collected every year. So how have we done this? Well, our research has pioneered understanding of how seizures can emerge from large-scale brain networks, and we've published extensively on the topic since 2012. We construct computer models of those brain networks and inform them using short segments of apparently normal EEG. And simulating those models under a variety of conditions rapidly reveals the ease with which seizures can emerge. And it's these simulations that inform the BioEP risk score. In published studies, we've demonstrated that BioEP achieves equivalent performance to current clinical standards, yet uses only that first EEG. We've also got pilot data that shows that if you calculate BioEP prior to and post-administration of anti-seizure medications, a change in the BioEP score can reveal response to that treatment. In our 4 main market territories, we estimate there are over 2.5 million EEGs performed annually for the purposes of epilepsy diagnosis. And working in partnership with our clinical partners gives us natural early adopters. Our pricing on a payment by results basis has been carefully market tested. In the UK, health economics suggest a saving of around £700 per person for each individual for which BioEP is utilised at the same time as the first EEG. And in the USA, the CPT code 95957 for digital EEG analysis bills between $500 and $1,000 per time. Our route to market is built around validation through collaboration. So we involve all of the key stakeholders in generating the evidence needed to demonstrate BioEP's clinical efficacy, as well as its social and economic benefits. Having recently concluded a retrospective validation study of BioEP considering a cohort of people with clinically inconclusive EEGs, we're now moving forwards to prospective studies which will see BioEP reach market in late 2024. Contrast this with our competitors who remain grounded in the belief that optimizing the status quo is the best we can achieve for patients and clinicians. The choice? Wait a year or more to sequentially collect evidence of limited value, or reveal that risk from the very first EEG? Would you wait for your car to crash, or replace your tyres when the tread level drops too low? We've brought together an exceptional team spanning scientific, commercial, clinical, and technical. Our co-founders both hold prestigious academic fellowships. Our technical team have developed products that have seen strong sales growth in other markets. Alongside the team, we've built an exceptional strategic advisory group that provides international leadership in many of the key areas that will be necessary to take us to market. We're currently fundraising. We're looking to close the round at the end of this year, and we're looking to achieve these 6 key steps that will enable us to ensure that BioEP reaches market at the end of 2024. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us, and I look forward to working with many of you as we break down those walls to epilepsy diagnosis and management. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions and answers. Whoa, okay, let's go. Frank first this time, and then, okay, go on.
If I understood you correctly, your digital biomarker is based on routine EEG measurement with the 36 electrodes, or how many these are. Is this completely independent when this EEG measurement have been done before seizure, between 2 seizures, after the patient has already had the experience of several seizures? Is there no influence on that?
Sure. Really good question. So these EEGs that we work with are typically routinely acquired from a first seizure clinic. So they'll have attended clinic having had 1 or more events that it's unclear whether or not they're seizures. So in about 70% of cases, there's nothing in the EEG that can currently be used clinically to confirm a diagnosis. Whereas what our algorithm does is reveals features essentially relating to the seizure-generating property of the brain network, and uses this to give a risk score, even in the absence of standard clinical features.
That means one seizure needs to have happened before.
A suspicion of a suspected seizure, that's typically what gets you to clinic. It doesn't require anything to be observed in the EEG itself to suggest whether or not there is epilepsy present, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Hemai, please.
So then this risk score, sort of unlike your car analogy, what is the actionability on that, given you might not know what type of epilepsy it is? What do you do then?
Okay, great. So if you think about it, so the risk score is equivalent to, say, the level of tyre wear on your tyres, and in the car case, you obviously replace your tyres. In this case, if there's a low risk of epilepsy, well, rather than, for example, spending 3, 4, 5 years consistently taking EEGs, hoping to observe a feature that isn't there, you may cross-refer people for the appropriate treatment. For example, in the case of non-epileptic attack disorder, the appropriate treatment is actually cognitive behavioural therapy under a neuropsychiatrist, rather than being put on anti-epilepsy medications, which is often what happens to people. Conversely, if you're at a high risk in the current clinical practice, you might be fast-tracked for video telemetry in order to try and confirm a case of diagnosis more rapidly, rather than going through the sequential steps that currently happen at the moment.
I thought we had a comment for once, because you show a comment. I was like, okay. Do we have any other question? We still have a minute. Yes, please, Frank, you go. Oh, we had one here. Okay, next.
Do you need to have the data of a full EEG, or does it also a wearable device do the job?
Great question. So BioEP can be calculated from as little as 5 minutes of EEG. So most routine EEGs are at least 20 to 30 minutes in duration, often very longer. In another project, we've actually been collecting data using an experimental headset that people with epilepsy can just apply themselves at home. And we found in that case that there is evidence that you can calculate the BioEP scores robustly from those 8-channel headsets without using any specialist clinical intervention on the part of the patient, which is really exciting, particularly for the prognosis application.
Mm-hmm. Last question, probably. Yes, please.
Do you think with all the data set that you're collecting, you could also go for pre-symptomatic disease biomarkers with this?
So the long-term ambition is to move beyond epilepsy and into other neurological conditions for which you can assess the risks. So, for example, in dementia would be a great one to look into. Other cases, such as traumatic brain injury, really interesting, where it's hard to predict at the time the injury occurs the long-term outcomes of that injury, but there's been evidence emerging in the literature which suggests that you would be able to predict the long-term outcomes from the initial trauma. So I think there's lots of interesting applications there.
Okay, I think in 9 seconds. Oh, question answer.
Is it related to criticality of brain states? Is that what you're measuring?
Yes, no.
Partially.
Partially. Okay, thank you that's a good one. Okay, thank you very much.